In this setup session, I'm going to map a city block mesh into a sphere. So I have these blocks on the ground plane, and I want the ground plane to become part of a spherical surface. So something like this to become something like this. And the idea to do this is to use the cosine and sine functions to map angles into circular position. So what I'm going to do to have this working for me, I'm going to build this in 2 steps. First, I'm going to have the circle that is on the same plane as the ground plane. So I'm going to have the circle that is on the ground plane like so. And then I'm going to build up a profile. So I'm going to have the profile like this. So to have the appropriate angles and then feed those angles into the cosine and sine function and have the circular coordinates from that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to map this side here from 0 to 360. And so this will give me a full circle. And then I'm going to map this side here from a minus 90 degrees to 90 degrees. And so this will give me this half circle like so. Now I could do that using the mesh point positions, and I could basically normalize them or remap them into those angles. But to make my life easier, what I've done here was to make a UV. And so I did a UV on the y-axis. And so I have the x coordinates on the UV U coordinate, and I have the Z coordinates on the V coordinates here. And well, the cool thing about the UV is that they are normalized. So, regardless of the values that I had here on my mesh, now the values go from 0 to 1 on U and from 0 to 1 on V. And well, so basically I have to remap 0 to 1 into 360, and I have to remap 0 to 1 into minus 90 to 90 degrees. So let me do that here in layout. I have here the UV map, and I'm on the displacement node editor, and basically I'm going to remove out the initial positions. So all that was there, it's basically going to disappear, and I'm going to do something from scratch. So I have my UV here, and so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to remap the U from 0 to 360. So to do that, I can use a remap node, and let's see, I'm going to put this here, and I can use this pi node by Akira Azagi. And so from 0 to 1, I want it to become 0, 2 pi radians. And so I can just put here the 2 pi in here. And so now I have a full circle angles going on. And so if I plug those angles here on cosine and sine, if I plug this here in x and z, you see that I get a circle. So what I was talking about here took place here. Right, now I want to, let's say I want to have the profile part. I want to have this part here that goes from minus 90 degrees to 90 degrees. And so for that, I'm going to map the V coordinates into that range. So I'm going to copy this remap node, and I'm going to plug the V here. And so I want from a minus 90 degrees. So in this case, I'm going to use pi over 2 and a sine node. So minus 90 degrees to 90 degrees. And I'm going to copy these nodes here. And now I have angle values that go from a minus 90 to 90. So I'm going to have the circular positions corresponding to that. So if I put this here, you see that I have a profile of the circle like I've drawn here. Now the thing is, I want this to be upright. So I'm actually going to plug this here on the y-axis. Right. So what do I want to do with these? Now, the y value, I wanted to apply it directly. And if I do that, if I apply that directly, you can see that what I get is a cylinder. As for the x value, I want to use it to choke the values on the top. So you can see that here in the center, I get a big circle. But as I move up, I get a smaller and smaller circle until I get a point. And so basically this value here, I used it on the y channel, but this value here, the cosine of this angle, I wanted to multiply so that I have smaller and smaller circles on this circle here. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to call a multiply node. Scalar multiply, and I'm going to use this value here to multiply these two values. I'm going to put this here, and I'm going to plug them here. Okay, so let's see. Oh, I forgot to plug. Okay, so now I got my sphere. This way I've went from this into this. So I got my ground plane mapped onto a sphere. What about my buildings? Well, I need to make them come out. And so in what direction I want them to come out? Well, I want them to come out in the same direction they have on the sphere, in the same position they have on the sphere. So from the origin to the position they have. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to add this 2 times. So I'm going to add scaled, and I'm going to add this again. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to control how much do I add this 2 times by using the position that they had on the y-axis. So the position that they had on the y-axis is the height of the building. And so I'm going to use that height to control how much they come out from the sphere. So the y-axis value comes here. And now I have this going on. So before and after. Right. So I mapped that city block into a sphere. Now I might want to have a little bit of fun with this and kind of control how things are going, sort of rig it. And so I have here this null, and I'm going to use this null to control some of the parameters. So what can I do to control the parameters? I'm using here this UV. Let's say that I come here to modeler and I scale this UV here. I do something like this. If I go back to layout, you can see that now I only have a portion of the sphere. So this is the sort of thing that I want to have interactively here in layout. So let me put the UV back, come back to layout. And so I have this item info with the null in there, and the position and the scaling of that null are going to transform the U and the V values of this UV map. So I have these transform 1D compounds here. So let me put this here, and I'm going to feed the U in here and the V in here and plug them appropriately in the proper remap node. Okay, so now when I scale the null, let's see if I got this correctly. Oh, no, I missed spot here. So when I scale this null on the X channel, I have a sweep on the sphere, on the circle. And when I scale the null on the Z axis, I get a sweep on the profile. So in a way, it's like I have a sphere modeling tool, an interactive modeling tool here, where I can decide the portion of the sphere that I want. I can also, for example, let's say if I put this down to quite small and I move it, I can also have a ring that is offset. So that's kind of fun. Or if I put this here, I can have this sort of thing. So this now becomes something that I can animate and have fun with. Maybe some extra things that I can do. I can, let's say, for example, change the center of scaling for the V. Let's say that I'm going to put the position on the y-axis here on the center, and I can also rig the height of the buildings. So let's say that I scale, let's say scale, or I can even multiply, and I put this here. And I plug this back here, and I'm going to connect the scaling on the y-axis to this. So now when I scale this null on the y-axis, you can see that the buildings come out, or even if I scale down, they go in. So I can have that sort of control. As for the center of scaling on the V coordinate, I can, for example, let's say if I scale this on the Z-axis, this works like this. But if I put this null up a little bit, and now I scale on the Z-axis, you see it scales from the top. So this allows me to sort of control the center of the scaling. So this is sort of thing that I wanted to show, both the setup on wrapping something onto a sphere using the cosine and the sine functions, and how to manipulate the parameters to basically have something that is rigged and it can be animated.